They say family is supposed to be your biggest supporter, but what if it's your biggest critic? What if, no matter what you do, you're always the lesser one? Hi, I'm Eli Reyes. I'm 31 and I own 3 of the most sought-after fine dining restaurants in downtown Chicago. But if you ask my family who I am, they'll say I'm just a waiter. Yeah, you read that right. That phrase still echoes in my head like a bad song stuck on repeat. Let me take you back to the night. It all cracked open. It was my older brother's promotion dinner. Big celebration. Suits, champagne, the whole shebang. My brother, Nathaniel, was just made executive director at his hedge fund or whatever. I honestly stopped keeping track after he made partner at 28. My parents worship him like he walks on water. Me? I was working the party. Yup, tray in hand, dressed in black. Smiling, nodding, serving tiny bites of lamb lollipops and caviar toast to the very people who used to pinch my cheeks at family BBQs. And my father? He saw me across the room, narrowed his eyes, then leaned over to one of my uncles and said loud enough for me to hear, "Having a child who waits tables? It's embarrassing. He used to be smart." He didn't even say it in anger, just disappointment wrapped in cold disdain. I wanted to disappear, but then something happened that none of them expected. That changed everything. And before I tell you what it was, let me ask you, if the people who raised you only wanted you, when you were shiny and polished, are they still family or just spectators to your downfall? Let's rewind a bit. I wasn't always the server in the suit. In fact, 5 years ago, I was working in finance too. Same path as my brother. I had a stable job at an investment firm, pulling in 6 figures. Parents were proud. Holidays were tolerable. But something felt off, like I was coloring inside lines drawn by someone else. In college, I used to joke with my best friends, Marcel and Izzy, that we'd open a bistro one day. A cool little spot with fusion dishes and jazz nights. It was just a dream, one of those late-night things you say after a few too many shots of espresso and delusion. But years later, Marcel called me out of nowhere and said, "I found the space, man. West Loop. It's perfect. You in?" At first, I said no. Of course I said no. Who gives up financial security for fine dining? I asked. Me, apparently. I quit. I left behind the job, the bonuses, the title. I swapped my tailored suits for aprons and 12-hour shifts. I started waiting tables at a Michelin-starred restaurant, learning how service works from the ground up. And I didn't tell my parents, because I already knew what they'd say. 3 months into my new life, I was carrying 3 plates at once like a pro. The table I approached had one familiar face, my Uncle Victor. His eyes widened like he'd just seen a ghost who owed him money. He didn't say a word, just watched me serve truffle risotto like it was a funeral. The next night, my dad called. "You're working in a restaurant?" He barked. I paused. "Yes. What the hell happened to you?" Click. I knew that was the beginning of the end. When I walked into their house a few days later, it wasn't just my parents waiting. Nathaniel and his wife were there too. The silence? It felt like court was in session, and I was the defendant. My father didn't waste time. He shoved his phone toward me. On the screen was a message from Uncle Victor. Thought Eli was killing it in finance. Turns out he's slinging appetizers. Your other son's the only real success. And below that, a clear photo of me in uniform, mid-service. Thanks, Uncle. I tried to explain. Told them I was opening a restaurant. That it was part of a long-term plan. That I had investors, a team, a vision. Nathaniel laughed. "You left a 6-figure job to play chef?" "Seriously?" His wife added. "You're basically a glorified barista." That one stung, especially coming from someone who once asked me for help refinancing her student loans. Then my mom chimed in. "Eli, we raised you to aim higher." And my father? Just one line. "Don't bother coming back until you grow up." That night, I left. Not just the house, but the version of me that begged for their approval. I doubled down. I poured everything I had into our restaurant. We called it Noir, a nod to the moody lighting and our love of underdog stories. Opening night, we were overbooked. 6 months later, we were featured in a local magazine. 1 year in, we broke even. 2 years? We expanded. Now, we've got 3 branches, a catering division, and a 2-year wait list for Friday reservations. But my family still thought I was a server because they never asked, not once. Until fate threw us back together. It was a Saturday. I was doing a surprise quality check at our River North location. We call them ghost runs. I walk in like a guest. See how the staff treats me when they don't know who I am. That's when one of our hostesses whispered, "Hey, Eli, we've got a tough table in the VIP lounge." One of the servers spilled wine and they're furious. I nodded. I'll handle it. I pushed through the doors, and there they were. My mom, my dad, Nathaniel, his wife, aunts, uncles, all dressed up, all seated in my restaurant. And they had no idea. Not yet. I stood at the entrance of the VIP lounge like I'd been dropped into a weird dream. Not a nightmare. Just one of those moments that feels surreal in slow motion. My father was adjusting his cufflinks. My mom was wiping a smudge off her wine glass. Nathaniel was mid-rant about the service. They hadn't seen me yet. For a second, I debated walking away. I didn't owe them anything, not even an explanation. But then my eyes met my mother's, and in that instant, I knew she recognized me. Not as the son who had built a business from nothing, but as the boy she thought had thrown his life away. She blinked, stared, then whispered something to my dad. He looked up, and when our eyes met, the contempt hit harder than the wine stain on his blazer. "You?" He didn't even try to hide the disgust in his voice. "You work here?" Nathaniel let out a low whistle. "So the rumors were true. You really are a waiter." He leaned back like he was enjoying this way too much. I kept my tone calm. "Actually, I manage this location." It wasn't a lie. I did manage it along with every other one. But Nathaniel couldn't let it go. Wow. From finance to food service. What a climb. I forced a smile. "Funny, I was just thinking the same thing about your manners." My mother cleared her throat loudly. "Eli, we didn't know this was your job. We were invited here. Had we known, you wouldn't have come?" I finished her sentence for her. She looked away. Silence. That same silence I grew up with. The kind that followed every achievement they refused to acknowledge. Let me rewind for a second, because if you're wondering why I didn't just tell them, I own the place. You're not alone. Even the manager, Camila, looked like she was about to spill the secret. But I stopped her with a glance. I needed to see it play out. I needed to know if they would respect me without the title, the money, the resume. Spoiler alert, they didn't. Nathaniel flagged down a server like he was summoning a servant. "You guys need to clean up this mess." My suit's dry clean only. The server, Diana, looked nervous. She was new, only 3 weeks in. I stepped between them. "We've already taken care of the bill for that wine. A replacement has been sent, and your table will receive dessert on the house." My dad scoffed. Trying to fix bad service with free food. Typical. It was like high school all over again. No matter what I did, it was never good enough. Then he turned to the others, laughing. "I can't believe I told everyone Eli was in real estate. Guess I gave you too much credit." There it was. That laugh. That same laugh he used when I didn't get into Princeton. When I forgot my lines during my 5th grade play. When I burned pancakes trying to surprise him on Father's Day. But this time I wasn't 12 anymore, and I wasn't about to stay silent. I turned to the group. "Do any of you know the name of this restaurant?" They glanced at each other. Nathaniel shrugged. "Someplace called Noir." "Why?" I smiled. "Because I built it." Confusion swept across their faces. My dad narrowed his eyes. "What are you talking about?" "I'm not the waiter. I'm the owner." I let that sit in the air like a drop of red wine on white linen. Camila, standing to the side, stepped forward quietly. "He's not just the owner. He's the founder of the Noir Group. This location is one of 3, actually. 4 next month." My family's faces shifted like a slow-moving train wreck. My mom's jaw tightened. My father's fingers gripped the edge of the table. Nathaniel blinked too many times in a row. No one spoke. So I helped them out. "You know what's wild? I used to think if I became successful enough, you'd be proud of me. That if I reached some invisible benchmark, I'd finally be one of you again. But I realized something." I leaned in, just enough to make them listen. "Respect isn't something I can earn from people who never learned how to give it." The next part was almost cinematic. A man in a charcoal suit entered the room. confident, familiar. It was Mr. Carter, one of Noir's high-profile investors and Nathaniel's firm's largest client. Nathaniel instantly stood, that fake corporate smile plastered on his face. "Mr. Carter!" "Great to see you, sir." Mr. Carter barely nodded at him. Instead, he looked past Nathaniel and smiled at me. "Eli, I had no idea you'd be here tonight. Just checking on things," I said, shaking his hand. He clapped my back. "Well, the place is phenomenal. Your vision's really something else. I bring every one of my clients here now." Then he turned to Nathaniel. "You never told me your brother was this Eli. I've been dining here for over a year." Nathaniel didn't respond, just sort of deflated. For once, no comeback, no smirk, just silence. Mr. Carter gave me a nod. "Keep up the good work. We need more places like this in the city." And just like that, he was gone. But the silence he left behind? It was louder than any applause. I didn't stick around for dessert. As I walked back through the kitchen, Camila caught up with me. "Eli, are you okay?" I paused. "Yeah. I'm just tired of pretending their approval means anything." She nodded, didn't push. Because she knew. My staff always knew more than my family ever bothered to. An hour later, as I wrapped up my shift in the office, Diana knocked gently and handed me a note. They left this at the register. I opened it. A napkin, scribbled with shaky handwriting. "We didn't know. We're proud of you. Come home sometime." No name, no signature. Just that. I folded the napkin neatly and placed it in the drawer beside the others. Yes, others. Because that wasn't the first half-hearted olive branch they'd sent. And each one reminded me of the same thing. They only wanted me back once they realized I wasn't just the waiter in the room. I leaned back, staring at the ceiling. Maybe it's not about revenge. Maybe it's about finally being seen. But either way, this story isn't over yet. After that night, I thought I'd feel something satisfaction, maybe. A little victory in my chest. But the truth? All I felt was tired. Not physically. Not even mentally. Just a kind of soul-deep exhaustion that settles in when you've spent too many years trying to earn a seat at a table that was never meant for you. I didn't go home after closing up the restaurant. I didn't hit the bar or text a friend to vent. Instead, I drove. No music, no GPS, just the quiet hum of the road and my thoughts spinning in circles. It hit me somewhere near the lake. That feeling. The one that whispers, "Even now, it's not enough, is it?" It's funny how we expect apologies to fix things. Like a few words can undo a childhood of being second place. That napkin note, the one they left after dinner, I'd seen that handwriting before. It was my mom's. I know because that's the same script she used on birthday cards once where Nathaniel got paragraphs of praise, and I got a line and a smiley face. "Proud of you." 3 words that came years too late and carried no weight. So I didn't respond. Not because I was being petty, but because I had nothing left to say. Some silences aren't cold, they're just final. The next few weeks, I poured myself back into work. The Noir team was prepping for our 4th branch opening in Hyde Park. New menus, new hires, new lighting fixtures that cost more than my first car. I was on calls, reviewing wine lists, finalizing floor plans. Staying busy was easy. Numb, even easier. But something inside me had shifted. Not in a dramatic phoenix rising kind of way. More like the slow tightening of a knot that had been loose for too long. I wasn't angry. I was done. And sometimes, that's worse for the people who think you'll always come back. About a month after the dinner, Nathaniel called. I almost didn't answer. The only reason I did? Curiosity. "Hey," he said, like we'd just chatted yesterday. "What do you want?" I replied flatly. He hesitated. "Can't I just check in?" "No." He cleared his throat. "All right, look. I've been thinking about what happened." I stayed quiet. And I guess I didn't really know how far you'd come. It caught us off guard. Us. There it was again. My achievements were still something that happened to the family, not something they'd ever supported. "You know Mom's birthday's next week," he added. "We're doing dinner at the house. She really hopes you'll come." I stared at my ceiling fan as it spun above me. "Did she say that?" I asked. Pause. "No, but I'm sure she does." I smiled bitterly. That's what I thought. Before he could respond, I ended the call. No yelling, no tears. Just one click. It's amazing how much power you take back the first time you stop explaining yourself. A few days later, something unexpected happened. We were holding a private event at Noir River North. A small wedding reception, just 30 guests, elegant setup, live cello. Toward the end of the evening, I stepped out to thank the couple. That's something I always do when the night winds down. Personal touch. Keeps the heart in the business. As I approached their table, I noticed someone sitting near the back alone, glass of champagne untouched. It was my Aunt Lorraine, my mom's sister. We hadn't spoken in years. She stood when she saw me, gave me that tight-lipped smile older women reserve for moments they don't know how to navigate. "I didn't know this place was yours," she said. I didn't smile back. Most don't. She looked around. "It's beautiful, warm, feels like you." That caught me off guard. "Did you come here for the wedding?" I asked. She shook her head. "No, I came to talk to you." I raised an eyebrow. "Why?" She looked down, picked at the corner of her napkin. "Because I saw what happened that night. The dinner. Your mom told me afterward. She tell you what she said?" I asked. "No," she replied. But I've known her long enough to guess. She finally met my eyes. "Eli, I know what it feels like to be the invisible one. I was your grandma's second daughter. Your mom was the golden child. I got used to being the helper, the listener, the one who just dealt with it. I didn't say anything. I didn't know how," she continued. "I watched you grow up trying so hard. And I watched your parents ignore the things that didn't fit their picture." My throat tightened. Not because of her words, but because someone finally saw me. "I'm sorry," she said softly. "I should have spoken up years ago." I nodded slowly. "You just did," she smiled, eyes watery. "If you ever need someone who remembers all of you, not just the version they chose, I'm here." After she left, I stood in the back corridor for a while, just breathing, letting the weight of that moment sink in. It didn't fix everything. It didn't erase decades of being overlooked. But it was real. And sometimes, real is enough to start healing. 2 weeks passed. Then came the text. From my mom. "Dinner Sunday. Your brother's bringing a client. Would be nice if you joined. Not we'd love to see you. Not I miss you. Just a calendar invite disguised as reconciliation." I stared at the message. No part of me wanted to go, but something told me I should. Not for them. For me. When Sunday rolled around, I didn't wear a suit. I wore what I always wore: dark jeans, rolled sleeves, and a leather band watch. The same clothes I wore the night Noir opened. I rang the bell. My dad answered. He looked surprised. "Didn't think you'd show." I smiled. "I almost didn't." Inside, it was the usual setup: fancy plates, polished silverware. Nathaniel already halfway through a story about markets and mergers. No one stood up when I entered, so I pulled out my own chair, sat down like I belonged there. Because I did. Dinner was quiet at first. My mother made roast duck, which she used to save for holidays. I noticed the small things: the extra glass at my place, the good wine, the tablecloth she only brought out for guests. Everything about the meal screamed performance. Halfway through, Nathaniel cleared his throat. "So, Eli," he said, "we were just telling Mark here about Noir. He hadn't heard you're in the restaurant scene." I didn't flinch. "It's not just a scene. It's my life." Mark smiled politely. "I've heard good things. My wife's obsessed with your dessert flights." My mom chimed in. "We're very proud. Eli's done. Well, quite a bit, actually." My fork paused mid-air. I looked at her, and she looked away. Of course, because pride that only shows up when someone else praises you isn't pride. It's convenience. So I said nothing and finished my meal. After dinner, my mom followed me into the hallway as I was getting ready to leave. She touched my arm. "I know I haven't said it much, or at all, but I do think about you. I keep up. I see the news, the awards." I turned to her. "Then why'd you stay silent all these years?" She looked hurt. I didn't know what to say. "That's the thing," I said. "You didn't have to say anything perfect. Just anything." She didn't reply. I stepped out the door. This time, I didn't expect an apology. I didn't want one. What I wanted was to stop hoping for something that would never come. The week after that dinner, I couldn't stop thinking about something my aunt had said. "I'm here if you ever need someone who remembers all of you." That line stuck, because for so long I'd only shown parts of myself depending on the room I was in. Polished version at family dinners, hustler version in the kitchen, cool, collected business owner in meetings, but never the whole me, never all at once. It was like I'd learned to divide myself into bite-sized pieces, hoping someone might finally take a bite and say, "This is good, this is enough." But no one ever did. Not until I did. The opening of our fourth noir location was set for that Friday. Hyde Park. Cozy, minimalist design, big windows, warm lighting, a menu that told a story in every course. It was our most ambitious location yet. We'd invited critics, investors, and loyal guests from the very beginning. Marcel had even flown his parents in from Portland. Izzy's mom, who once called our plan a cute hobby, was now our biggest cheerleader, snapping photos like a proud sports mom at a championship game. And me? I stood in the center of that dining room like a man finally stepping into his skin. Everything felt aligned, like all the bruises and silence had somehow built this. 2 days before the grand opening, I got a call from Camila. "Eli, I don't know if I should tell you this." I was in the middle of reviewing lighting fixtures. I paused. "What's going on?" She sighed. "Your family made a reservation. The whole table, your brother, your parents, some relatives, Saturday night." I didn't say anything. She added, "They used a different last name on the booking, but I recognized them." Of course they did. They didn't come to the opening night. They waited, calculated, like they wanted to test the waters first, see if this location was worth associating with. "Do I cancel it?" Camila asked gently. I thought for a long second. "No," I said. "Let it ride." When Saturday came, I didn't dress like the owner. I wore the same black uniform as the rest of the staff. Apron. No name tag. Hair tied back. Earpiece in. I wanted to feel what they felt. I wanted to be present, not as a brand, not as a boss, but as a person inside the moment. When the hostess whispered, "They're here," I didn't flinch. I walked out from the kitchen, plates in hand, just like always. And there they were, table of 8, dressed to impress, pretending they didn't know exactly where they were. My mom's eyes met mine first. She blinked like she hadn't expected to see me. Nathaniel leaned in and whispered something. Probably a jab. That's his default. My dad didn't even look up. I set the plates down. Not a word, just a nod. A glance. Professional. Like any other guest. Except they weren't. They never had been. The meal went smoothly. They laughed, toasted, pretended. I watched from the corner of the room as Nathaniel tried to charm the sommelier, as my mom inspected the cutlery like she was judging a competition, as my dad asked questions he already knew the answers to. That's when Camila walked over and whispered, "They asked if the owner's around." I almost laughed. "Tell them he's in the back," I said. But then I changed my mind. "No. Actually, tell them I'll be right out." I didn't walk out with an entourage. No mic, no announcement. I just walked over, poured myself a glass of still water, and stood at the edge of their table. "Evening," I said. 8 heads turned. No one spoke first, so I did. "I wanted to thank you all for coming. It means something to see familiar faces here tonight." My dad cleared his throat. "Impressive place." I smiled politely. "Thank you." Nathaniel leaned back. "So this is your thing now?" "This has always been my thing," I said. "You just didn't see it." My mom looked around. "It's beautiful. You've done well." I nodded. "I have." The silence that followed wasn't awkward, it was thick, full, alive. Finally, Nathaniel broke it. "We've been talking. Maybe we could do a family night here sometime, keep it in the circle." There it was, the pivot. Now that they saw the success, the decor, the buzz they wanted in. Not in a malicious way, just in that subtle, entitled family way that assumes they're always welcome, no matter the history. I looked at each of them. Then I said, "No, just that. Simple, clear, final." My dad narrowed his eyes. "What do you mean, no? I mean, I've spent years inviting myself into a family that didn't want me. And now that I've built something worth noticing, I'm not opening the doors just because you showed up with smiles." My mom's lips parted, but I didn't let her speak. "I'm not angry. I'm not bitter. But I am done pretending we're something we're not," Nathaniel scoffed. "You're being dramatic." I turned to him, "And you're being predictable." He laughed. So what, this is revenge? No, I said. This is reality. You don't get access to the parts of me you ignored just because they turned out valuable. I stepped back, tone calm. Enjoy your meal. The dessert tonight is on the house. Everything else you'll need to pay for. And with that, I walked away. Not triumphant, not vengeful, just whole. In the kitchen, Marcel clapped me on the back. You okay? More than okay? I said. Izzy peeked over the counter. They still breathing out there? Barely, I smiled. The staff didn't ask for details. They didn't need to. They'd seen bits and pieces over the years, family visits, awkward conversations, Eli ducking out to take a call with that strained look on his face. But that night, they saw something different. They saw me choose peace over performance. After service, I sat in the back office alone. Camila dropped off a note, another napkin, another scribbled message. We didn't realize what we lost. Can we talk soon? I didn't even open it all the way. I slid it into the drawer with the others. That drawer's full now. No more room for half apologies. Some people wait their whole lives for closure. But closure isn't a conversation or a letter or a sudden change of heart from people who never really tried. Sometimes, closure is choosing to stop reopening the same door just because someone knocks louder. Word travels fast in this city. Not always in headlines, not always in gossip, but in the kind of quiet conversations that happen when the lights dim and the plates are cleared. 3 days after that dinner, I started noticing the shift. A PR contact emailed asking for a comment on the family dynamic behind Noir's rise. Someone must have talked. Maybe a cousin. Maybe someone at the table that night with a camera phone and an eager group chat. At first, I ignored it. But then came a message from a food blog one that usually writes about ingredients and plating, but this time wanted to talk about family, legacy, identity. That's when I realized they weren't interested in the food anymore. They were interested in the why behind it. And maybe, for the first time, I was ready to tell that part of the story. It started with a podcast. Small, local, heartfelt. The host had been a guest at our first branch years ago and reached out asking if I'd sit for an interview about entrepreneurship. I said yes. On one condition, no fluff. If you want polished sound bites and family fairy tales, I said, I'm not your guy. He laughed. Good. Because we're not that kind of show. So we talked. Not about profits or projections, but about growing up invisible. About rejection that doesn't scream it, just quietly erases. About how silence from the people who raised you can echo louder than any insult. I didn't name names. I didn't burn bridges. I just told the truth the way I lived it. And something about that struck a nerve. The episode dropped on a Tuesday. By Thursday, my inbox was flooded. Messages from strangers. From sons and daughters who felt overlooked, from kids who left home with nothing but a backpack and a stubborn belief that they could make it on their own, from people who had tried, failed, tried again, and still hadn't heard I'm proud of you. One message stuck with me. It was from a woman named Jaya, mid-30s, 2 jobs, built a bakery out of her apartment kitchen. She wrote, I listened to your story during my night shift. I cried in the stockroom. I didn't even know why. But I think it's because someone finally said what I've been feeling for years. Thank you for reminding me I'm not crazy for wanting respect from the people who never gave it freely. That one hit hard, because I knew that exact feeling. Of course, not everyone liked it. One morning, I woke up to a text from Nathaniel. Nice interview. Didn't know you were a victim now. I didn't respond. Then came a call from my mom. I didn't answer that either. She left a voicemail. Her tone clipped and defensive. You didn't have to put our business out there. Some things should stay in the family. Funny how silence was acceptable when I was the one being erased. But now that the silence had a microphone, it became a problem. The truth is, I didn't share my story for them. I shared it for people like Jaya, people like me. And once that story was out in the world, I couldn't put it back in the box. It kept growing. An editor from a lifestyle magazine reached out. They wanted to do a feature on found family, on how community can be built through food and storytelling. They asked if we could highlight the staff, the investors, the behind-the-scenes crew. I said yes. And when the piece ran, it didn't center me at all. It focused on Camila, Marcel, Izzy, the people who showed up when it mattered. That's the thing about chosen family. They don't just appear out of nowhere. They're built. One shift, one shared meal, one unspoken understanding at a time. And those people? They never asked me to prove my worth, they just saw it. A few weeks later, I got a text I didn't expect. It was from my dad. "We're coming by the restaurant Friday. Just us. Just us. No cousins. No Nathaniel. No audience." I stared at that message for a long time, and for reasons I still don't fully understand, I said okay. When Friday came, I waited by the front. No disguise this time. I didn't hide in the kitchen or wear an apron. I stood at the host stand, blazer on, tie slightly loosened. Present. At exactly 7:15, they walked in. My mother in a navy shawl. My father in his usual gray jacket, looking a bit smaller than I remembered. They stopped when they saw me. My mom smiled tightly, like her face didn't quite know how to wear it naturally. My dad nodded. "Eli, Dad. Nice place. Thanks." We stood there for a moment, awkward and silent, until I led them to a small table in the back. Private. Quiet. No servers. I poured their water myself, then sat down across from them. My mom broke the silence first. We listened to the podcast. I raised my eyebrows. "Oh?" She hesitated. "You were honest." I said nothing. She tried again. It hurt to hear, but I think maybe it needed to. Still, I stayed quiet. My father looked at me. Not angry, just weary. "I didn't realize how far back this went," he said. "The distance. I thought we were just hard on you because you could take it." I nodded slowly. I thought the same thing for a while. Until I realized I didn't have to keep proving that. He didn't argue, which honestly surprised me. He just stared at his glass. Then he said something I never thought I'd hear. "I was wrong, that's it. 3 words. No excuses, no backstory. Just that." I wish I could say it unlocked something magical. That we cried, hugged, healed. But real life isn't a movie. Sometimes you don't get the swelling music moment. Sometimes it's just a man in his 60s, sitting at a table he never thought his son could build, admitting quietly, carefully that he got it wrong. And sometimes that's enough. They didn't stay long. They paid their bill, insisted on leaving a tip even though I tried to waive it. My mom hugged me a little too tightly. My dad shook my hand. And before they left, he looked back and said, "This place, it feels like you." That time, I smiled. Because he wasn't wrong. After they left, I walked through the restaurant slowly. Table by table, light by light. Everything they once ignored, belittled, or dismissed was now real, tactile. Built brick by brick with the kind of strength they never knew I had. And maybe now, they were starting to. That night, I closed up alone. Lights off, doors locked. I sat at the counter, sipping tea, letting the quiet wrap around me. No buzz of kitchen orders, no footsteps of servers, just stillness. But not the kind I grew up with. This silence felt earned, like rest after a long run. And in that silence, I realized something. This wasn't about revenge anymore. It never really was. It was about returning to myself. It's been 3 months since that night at Noir, the night my parents sat across from me, unsure, unfamiliar, and maybe for the first time, truly quiet. I haven't seen them since. Not out of anger, not even distance, just space, the kind you don't rush to fill, the kind that teaches you to breathe differently. I don't check my phone waiting for their texts anymore. I don't walk into holidays wondering if this year will be different. Because I've stopped expecting apologies to fix history. And that shift quiet as it was changed everything. The world kept turning. Our 5th location just opened on the north side, smaller, more intimate. We called it Solace. Not because it sounded trendy, but because that's what it became for me. A space to exhale, to cook without performance, to serve without needing validation. It's funny how when you stop chasing closure, you start making peace with the fact that maybe some people will never understand your journey, and that's okay. Because the real gift is finally understanding it yourself. Izzy asked me the other day if I'd ever want a real sit down with my family. A deep talk, full circle. I told her I don't think I need one. We had a version of it already. The quiet dinner, the handshake, the subtle recognition in my father's eyes, the apology with no bow tied around it. And maybe that's all there was ever going to be. Some relationships don't get the movie ending. They just fade into something gentler, less heavy. I used to want fireworks. Now, I'm okay with candlelight. Nathaniel hasn't reached out since the podcast. I don't think he liked the attention, especially the parts where I didn't name him but made it clear. I stopped orbiting his shadow, and I meant it. That shadow used to swallow every corner of my self-worth. His accomplishments, their praise, the way I was always the other son. But these days, when someone brings up my brother, I don't flinch. I don't compete. I don't try to outshine him with some stat or headline, because he's not my mirror anymore. I am. Sometimes guests at Noir ask if I'll ever open a cookbook, or do a show, or tell the whole story in a memoir. I always laugh. Not because it's a bad idea, but because I've already lived the story. Every scar, every silence, every night scrubbing counters and wondering if I was crazy for chasing a dream. No one believed in it's all there, folded between the linen napkins and menu drafts. People want a happy ending, but the truth is, life doesn't end at the apology or the breakthrough or the moment they finally say, "I see you." That's just where it starts. And speaking of starts, I got an email last week from Jaya the baker who cried during her shift while listening to the podcast. She wrote, "We just signed the lease on our first storefront. It's small, but it's ours. And I wanted you to know, I kept going because you did." I stared at that message for a long time. Then I wrote her back, "You didn't keep going because of me. You kept going because deep down you knew you were worth betting on. I just reminded you. That's all I ever wanted. Not to be applauded, not to be envied. Just to live loud enough that someone else would feel less alone." The other night, after close, I walked through Noir alone. Lights dim, music soft. The space felt familiar, but also brand new, like it had evolved with me. I stopped at table 6. That's where they sat months ago. My parents, my brother, the family that built me without knowing how to hold me. I ran my fingers across the table's edge. Smooth, solid, like everything I've built. No cracks, just character. And then I did something I hadn't done in years. I called my mom. She picked up on the second ring. "Eli?" "Yeah, just wanted to check in." A pause. "Are you okay?" "I am. Just thought I'd say hi." Her voice softened. "It's good to hear from you. We didn't talk long, just a few minutes." But it was enough. Not because we fixed everything, but because we didn't try to pretend anymore. No more performing, no more dodging, just people trying to connect. And maybe that's what healing actually looks like: messy, slow, and quieter than you imagined. People always ask what success means to me now. It used to be awards, packed houses, articles with my name in bold. But these days, success looks like sleeping without the weight of proving myself. It looks like laughter that doesn't need to be earned. It looks like a napkin drawer I don't add to anymore. It looks like the quiet pride on my staff's faces when a guest says, "This place just feels right." It's peace. That's the word, peace. So if you're listening, whether this found you at midnight in your kitchen or on your commute, or during a moment you didn't know you needed, let me leave you with this. You don't owe anyone proof of your worth. Not your family, not your old friends, not the world. Your story isn't measured by who claps when you arrive or who finally apologizes when you've made it. It's measured by how many times you stood up after being made small, how many times you whispered to yourself, "Keep going," even when no one was watching, and how you kept walking even when it hurt. This is me closing the chapter. No rage, no revenge, no ribbons, just release. Because I'm not carrying this anymore. And maybe neither should you. Story 2. I once thought that the safest place was with family. That is, until my sister got me sent to a mental health facility. After I was secured inside those white doors, she began to train my financial account in her actual game. With the support of our whole family, I sold the house, took over my investments, and walked down the aisle wearing a bridal gown. She was mistaken to believe that I would never wake up. I not only woke up, but I also came up with a strategy to reveal everything and reclaim what was rightfully mine. Follow along with my story and share it with me. Who is the insane person? Hello to everybody. I'm Aiden, and I'm 34 years old. I manage a company in the construction sector and reside in Boston. something that took years of hard effort and just my own two hands to build from the ground up. I've had a difficult life, but I've never grumbled. I think hard effort is important. I think that love exists. I also think that family is important. I used to believe that my loved ones would reciprocate my efforts if I gave my all, and I completely trust that method of living. Until my fiancé's unexpected death one day completely upended my existence, and I began to realize the genuine character of my family members at that same time. I can still clearly recall the day things began to come apart a year ago. It was a typical day. My phone buzzed as I was finishing up a meeting with a business partner at my office. I was familiar with the name displayed on the screen. Lily, my fiancé. My heart skipped a beat for no apparent reason. It didn't feel quite right. Lily wasn't on the other end of the call when I answered. Her mother was the one. She spoke in a frantic, tear-choked voice. Aiden Lily was involved in a collision. She failed to show up. "Come now, please." And then I simply froze. The world around me seemed to disappear. My hands were squeezing the phone so firmly that they turned numb, and all I could hear was the sound of wind in my ears. The lady I adored, Lily, the one with whom I had arranged a wedding for the fall, the person I believed I would spend my later years with, vanished in an instant. I can't even recall how I got to the hospital from my office. It's all a blur. I only know that the ring I had stashed away in my drawer, the vows we made to one another under the balcony lights, and the wedding I had been planning for months were all gone forever. Lily's funeral was held 3 days later. I watched as people arrived to pay their respects at the funeral home, hearing the standard consoling remarks. However, it didn't register. I felt like I was just a walking shell, not alive. It was as though the breath had been sucked out of the room each time I gazed at her picture. The void she left behind could never be filled. I went back to the place we used to call home after the funeral, the sofa that we both chose online. Lily insisted on altering the drapes since she thought they were too outdated. After the wedding, she pledged to learn how to cook in the kitchen. It was all still there. All but her. Uncertain of whether to stand, sit, or take any action, I walked about my house. Lily was gone, but I had no idea that I was going to lose much more. The business I had spent 6 years creating had a serious financial problem when I was still in the throes of mourning. One large project after another fell apart. My team's morale plummeted, and contracts were canceled. I made an effort to remain composed, but my mental state had changed. The pressure continued to build. It all got too much, especially after losing Lily. I wasn't eating, I couldn't sleep, and my mind was racing all the time. There were times when I didn't even recognize who I had become. And then my sister Everly appeared just when I was at my lowest. 2 weeks after the funeral for Lily, I can still clearly recall that day. I observed an Everly silver SUV parked in front of my gate as I arrived home after yet another long, grueling day of trying to keep everything from coming apart. A tiny part of me paused. She had been frequenting me recently, particularly when I was most in need. However, I dismissed that idea. She is my sister. She is only here to assist. She has no other purpose. In addition, there was one item in this universe that I clung to. Now, it was only the two of us. There wasn't much of our family left because our parents had died years ago, and those who remained lived in distant places, wishing to avoid keeping her waiting. As soon as I got out, I hurried inside the garage. I heard Everly call out, "Big brother, you've been looking worn out recently. How are things at work?" With exactly the appropriate amount of concern, she inquired quietly. I felt comforted by the way she stated it. Perhaps I was simply that exhausted. To the extent that a small act of kindness seemed like a lifeline, I've been under pressure from all sides over the past 3 weeks. I had begun to see cracks in several of my real estate assets. I was now dealing with the consequences of some bad choices I had made in the past. She didn't have to wait long. "Not great," I said. "Enter now." We entered the house once I opened the door. When Everly spoke again, I hadn't even had time to prepare her coffee. With a calm, confident tone, she replied, "You don't have to do everything alone. I can provide you with the financial support you need to restructure the business, if you require it." Right then, I couldn't think of a single reason to refuse. Everly had never made a request. She was usually the first to offer assistance, if anything. The presence of her gave me the impression that I might not be entirely alone. Everly frequently stopped by in the evenings that followed. No commotion, no extravagant displays. She would make a cup of hot tea, prepare something easy, and then sit calmly as I spent hours discussing cash flow, investors, budgeting, and the growing heir issue. She never once appeared worn out. I started to rely on Everly more and more over time. She was more than simply my younger sister. She was a partner who kept quiet, someone calm enough to provide well-considered ideas and intelligent enough to see weaknesses in my financial goals. Even though Everly had never taken a formal finance course, she would always participate in discussions about cost structures and contracts. She focused on the main concerns and asked the appropriate questions. I began to think that she was the one who could get me through this storm. When I eventually acknowledged that I was no longer able to manage everything by myself, a month later, I gave giving her greater responsibilities some serious thought. Even though Everly never pushed, I still felt guilty for not formally allowing her to take on a more important position whenever she inquired about the quarterly reports or proposed restructuring the accounting system. 2 weeks later, Everly finally came out and said it one evening. There was a tranquil assurance in her tone, and her voice was soft and serene. "I know you're tired, Aiden. I'm prepared to help if you need it." I lacked the courage to refuse. I needed someone right then, someone who could shoulder the burden. And the person I trusted the most to give me everything so I could take care of the firm for you was Everly, who had been with me since we were little. "You should relax, consult a physician, and take some time to regroup," she said. "I will monitor the investments, handle the cash flow, and take care of the operations. I'm capable of doing this. Just concentrate on improving." I was aware that she was only acting out of compassion for me and had no other motive. Sincerely, I thought my sister was only trying to assist. And to be honest, I didn't have many other choices at that moment. The next day, I signed a power of attorney. I needed time to recover after Lily's death. I had to get away from the mayhem. I was no longer able to keep up. When I gave Everly the power of attorney, I genuinely thought I had made the correct decision. I was exhausted at the time, emotionally broken from losing Lily, and under mounting financial strain from the business. I needed to sleep. I needed to get away from Everly, who had promised to take care of things for me, and the never-ending grind that was suffocating us both seems to be the sole remedy. She promised to temporarily take over the business, the money, and all day-to-day management while I healed. At first, though, everything appeared to proceed without a hitch. Projects proceeded, reports were received on a regular basis, and the statistics appeared to be stable. My breathing returned. I hoped I had put my confidence in the appropriate person. But eventually, something felt off. I gradually came to the realization that I was no longer involved in important decisions or meetings. I no longer received the documents I used to review in my inbox. Plans that I had previously approved were now being changed without my input. Everything was being run by Everly as though I hadn't been there. I felt as though I was being forced out of the business that I had founded. Everly then recommended that I see a psychiatrist 2 weeks later. "You're carrying too much," she said. "You should have your mental health examined. Everything. It has been too overwhelming lately." I was unable to dispute that. I lacked the strength to dispute her statement. I thought she truly cared because she was firm but gentle. I therefore concurred. On a Saturday morning, we visited Dr. Jogger's clinic. I was unaware that the day would usher in the worst nightmare of my life. Everly and the doctor had already plotted behind my back. They falsified my medical records to say I had a mental illness and required emergency inpatient care. After that, they gave me a pill, just a little relaxation aid. I accepted it, and I was in a locked room in a mental hospital when I woke up. It was a sealed door. No faces you recognize, no escape. I became aware that I had been imprisoned at that precise moment. No computer, no phone, no way to get in touch with my friends, staff, or lawyer. I was unaware of the company's current state. I was unable to get into my bank accounts. Even access to my own life was gone. The days that followed had been entirely Everly's. For them, there is only one word. Hell, they always said no when I asked to talk to a doctor. They made me take stabilizing medication and pushed me back into bed, whenever I asked to leave. There was nothing I could control. Schedules for eating, sleeping, and even taking a shower were all tracked, limited, and prescribed. And Everly was behind it all. She waited until I was at my weakest to make her move. Wearing the mask of a devoted sister, she used doctors, sedatives, and the legal system to trap me. She said it was all for my recovery, but she was taking advantage of my temporary incapacity to carry out a full-blown takeover. It wasn't until later, after I escaped that place, that I uncovered the truth. While I was locked away, Everly quietly sold the house, transferred the investment portfolio, and drained every cent from both my personal and business accounts. Every move was made in the shadows. When I had no way to resist, no way to oversee anything, and no one left to speak up for me, my sister imprisoned me. And while I was slowly losing myself, Everly was building a new life, using everything I had spent my entire life working for. After 3 months locked inside the hospital, my life had shrunk down to nothing but pills, checkups, and for cold, lifeless walls. Every day was the same. No freedom, no voice. I eventually became a shadow of myself, lost in a world wholly governed by others. Then one day I was relocated to a new institution. No one explained why. That old sensation of hopelessness came back. Once again, I was transferred like an item without being questioned, without a choice. The new house was more contemporary, cleaner, but colder too. I was absolutely isolated, only permitted to see physicians or nurses. No family, no friends, no one even knew where I was. And then something I never imagined happened that day. I was sitting peacefully on my bed, thoughts blank, waiting for another pointless day to pass. When the door swung open, a man walked in. When I looked up, my heart almost stopped. I learned everything I know about markets, investing, and how to remain composed under duress from my former college mentor, Professor Martin. Aiden, my God, why are you here? His voice was clear with disbelief as he blurted out. I froze once I saw him. A wave of feelings that I had suppressed for months erupted out of nowhere. I have no idea anymore. Everly was choked out by me. My sister, I needed treatment, she said. She gave me a prescription and took me to the doctor. I was at a mental health facility when I awoke. I told him a little about what had transpired. For a long time, Professor Martin looked at me. Finally, with much conviction, he spoke softly. You're not welcome here. I will assist you since I know you. Those remarks were like a ray of light piercing the never-ending blackness. In months, for the first time, I was not isolated. I was believed by someone. Someone saw the unfair situation I was in. I'm going to ask for an independent assessment, he added. You should have a genuine opportunity to be heard. Additionally, I will personally support such procedure. I felt as though I could finally breathe again as his words took hold. Despite my overwhelming feelings, I realized for the first time that the day I would leave that place was not far off. The assessment procedure started a few days later. To make sure everything was done legally and openly, Professor Martin had been in touch with a group of impartial medical professionals. Things began to shift while I awaited the evaluation. Medication was no longer a must for me. I was permitted to have a private, unobserved meeting with the assessing psychiatrist every day. This time, no one attempted to assign me a label, in contrast to the so-called examinations I had previously undergone. I wasn't treated like a patient by the doctor. He gave me a human-like expression. He inquired about my life before to anything, Lily, my career, and the endeavors I had dedicated my entire being to. He allowed me to explain my tale in detail. No disruptions, don't pass judgment, simply listening. I thought I had lost it all, yet with every day I began to feel it again. A feeling of mastery. No loaded questions meant to give the impression that I was insane were asked. No suspicious looks. Only open discussions between an anxious guy and someone who genuinely want to comprehend. I told him everything, but he had brought me to the clinic. How I felt silenced, alone, and unheard. How I claimed I wasn't mentally sick, but nobody in the mental hospital would believe me. Professor Martin helped me more than simply get through the test. He continued. He got in touch with a lawyer, assisted with the paperwork, and made sure I would be prepared to petition for the full restoration of my civil rights and take back control of my life when the findings were announced. The assessment findings were received 3 weeks later. There was no mental illness affecting me. I was completely sane and legally capable of managing my money, operating a business, and making decisions for my own life. The doctor nodded after giving me a composed gaze. Adan, congratulations. All of your rights will be reinstated. What I was hearing was so unbelievable. I was no longer a puppet, a prisoner, or someone who had been manipulated by Everly at that very moment. Once more, I was myself. Professor Martin grinned as soon as I passed the test. I always had faith that you would survive. Oh, he said, presenting the formal report to me. That piece of paper was firmly in my grasp. It was more than a piece of paper. It was evidence. Evidence of the truth. A weapon to reverse all of Everly's actions. Freedom was now within reach. And I wasn't going to miss it this time. I was going to return all that she had taken. I deserved to live my life as I saw fit. Not only for my own dignity. I didn't give myself a break once I was deemed mentally competent and discharged from the hospital. I was aware of one thing. I had to get back all that I had lost. I knew it would be difficult to approach Everly. She was intelligent, strategic, and incredibly skilled at deceiving others. I needed concrete proof, something indisputable. If I was going to expose her, I spent a little time at Professor Martin's residence after I was discharged from the hospital. The man who was the first to think I wasn't crazy, in addition to helping me get out. Really, I started to reassemble my thoughts in his house. One memory, one thought, gradually tying the dots together, one at a time. Then, one seemingly innocuous coffee-drinking afternoon, a crucial detail emerged out of nowhere. Professor Martin was remembering persons he had known in the medical industry. He said as he poured another cup of coffee, "You know, Aiden, Gregory was a really competent doctor I used to work with. Years ago, we worked together on several medical education initiatives. He has been in the industry for more than 20 years and is well known." I froze when he mentioned that name, Gregory. It struck me in the chest like a bolt of lightning. It could not be mistaken. The signature bore that name. The doctor who approved a falsified mental report was him. The one that led to months of imprisonment. I put down my cup carefully. A knot of tension quickly rose in my chest. My thoughts thundered with a single inquiry. Would I be able to learn something if he was someone Martin knew personally? I filled Professor Martin in on Gregory's involvement, the forged documents, and my commitment without a third party's assessment. Martin nodded resolutely after appearing surprised. He said, "Let me see if I can set up a meeting." With the slightest sense of relaxation, I exhaled slowly. For the first time, I saw a way forward, a way that may ultimately lead to justice, and the truth and my optimism started to build once again. A few days later, they met in Dr. Gregory's private office. I had a covert recorder in my jacket pocket as I entered. He was clearly surprised when he spotted me. "What are you, Aiden? Why are you here?" Anger still boiled under the surface, but I maintained my cool. "Doctor, I'm here because I still don't understand what happened," I said slowly and clearly. "For what reason was I committed to a mental health facility? Why didn't you adequately evaluate me before authorizing treatment?" He began to fumble, clearly uncomfortable. As soon as he gave me a glance, his breathing quickened and his eyes changed, and I could see it. He stumbled out an answer. "You were losing control," Everly informed me. "She presented proof that you posed a risk to yourself, and I simply accepted it based on her testimony." I was unaware of how bad the situation was. I sat back in my chair and spoke in a calm but straightforward manner. "Despite never having met me, you signed my medical records." He took a while to respond. His gaze fell. The weight of our silence became louder than any confession. After a little while, his voice became hardly audible. A silent admission. "At the time, I believed her, but I didn't think there was anything really wrong with you." I was wrong. I didn't respond. I took the recorder out of my pocket and hit the stop button. I had what I required. That tentative, partial, but genuine acknowledgement served as evidence. Evidence of the falsification of the original mental health file. Evidence indicated Everly had fabricated a medical emergency by taking advantage of blind trust and personal ties. all in an attempt to seize me and my possessions. I looked him in the eye as I got up to go. Finally, he remarked, "I'm sure the court will find a way to add to your sentence if you so much as tell. Everly, I'm out." Then, with clarity, I left that office. It has been a while since I felt. Not since the first time in months that Lily had died. Something was missing, and I felt it. Strength, command, I hope. I knew I had obtained a crucial component of the jigsaw after my encounter with Dr. Gregory, a vocal acknowledgement that my medical records had been falsified. But if I really intended to expose Everly, it wouldn't be sufficient. While I was imprisoned, I needed proof that she had manipulated my finances, and I knew just who I had to locate. Days after Everly had me committed, I was reunited with Jack, the former financial officer who had been my right-hand man in the early years of establishing the business. Jack was sacked by her. He was a principled, private individual who didn't talk until absolutely necessary. For this reason, I think whatever records he may have retained would still be accurate and undamaged. I hoped that the rumors that Jack didn't depart empty-handed were accurate. I gave him a call and requested that we meet in a coffee shop that was quiet and private enough to discuss topics that no one else should hear. I noticed hesitancy in Jack's eyes as he entered. The same dependable coworker who used to know my every move better than anybody else in the organization was hiding behind that cautious expression. "Aiden, you know," he stated plainly, "I'm in serious trouble if she finds out I helped you." He spoke in a hushed, solemn, and cautious tone. I gave a nod. "I get it. She stole everything, though, Jack. Without proof, I won't be able to get any of it back." Jack gave me a long look before letting out a heavy but quiet breath. I saved a few copies. I knew that this wouldn't end peacefully one day, so he eventually stated that. He cautiously took out a big document from a bag made of dark leather after unzipping it. He set it down before me. Nothing to say, just take action. I opened it and saw that asset transfer agreements signed by people other than me had changed financial records that showed odd, irregular cash flows, suspicious activities, business assets transferred to unidentified personal investment accounts I had never approved, and loans taken out in my name that were completely unrecorded. Our official business plans never included it. Every page was a harsh reminder of how readily I had trusted Everly, and how profoundly she had abused that trust. It was like a smack in the face. Jack, however, marked every page before just handing it over. He highlighted the portions that had been changed in silence. With dates, transaction IDs, and indications of digital alteration, every note was accurate. "You need this," he said. "But watch out, Aiden. She's not the kind to leave without a struggle." With my eyes fixed on the documents in front of me, I gently tightened my hands. "Thank you. Thank you is not all I owe you." Jack didn't speak again. He gave a nod, got up, and left. After that, I spent a long time sitting in that cafe, going over every document, number, trace, and idea she had concealed. Well, with Dr. Gregory's tape and Jack's report, I had all I needed at last. 2 days after gathering all the proof, Professor Martin took me to see William McRae, an old friend of his lawyer. William's office was located close to the central square on the 3rd story of an ancient brick structure. No receptionist, no gaudy signage, just a little chamber filled with the smell of wood and old paper. Its shelves are stocked with precisely placed case files. He was thin, sharp-eyed, and had a raspy voice with quiet authority. He was around the same age as the professor. After giving me a quick glance, he continued, "I want to hear everything. Commence at the beginning," so I did. Nothing was left out of what I told him. I talked about the times I was locked up like a criminal, from the time Everly returned to my life as the picture-perfect sister to the way she made me a mental patient with only a signature, of the drugs that all but destroyed my identity. I informed him about the financial paperwork Jack had kept, about the tape with Dr. Gregory, and about the trust that was broken in the most cruel way possible. William remained silent as I spoke. He simply listened, occasionally nodding while making careful, pointed notes with his pen. He rested his elbows on the desk and looked up when I was done. "Aiden, what do you want to gain from this?" I looked him in the eyes. I spoke clearly, quietly, and steadily. "I want to put Everly behind bars. I want her to understand what it's like to lose her independence. I want her name listed in the court file for betrayal of blood, deception, and manipulation. Above everything, I want the return of all she took from me: my possessions, my power, and my dignity. William remained unflinching. Rather, he nodded slightly in approval. We don't go easy after that. We got the lawsuit written in 2 hours. William listed 3 main allegations, including falsifying medical documents and abusing guardianship, illegal transactions that result in the unlawful misuse of corporate and personal assets, serious ethical transgressions by conspiring with certified medical professionals, he continued. The judge won't just forfeit her inheritance rights or authority over your possessions if she accepts all of the accusations. She may face a least of 3 years in jail, if not more. I nodded, and I wasn't afraid. No pity, no second guessing. Everly had made her decision and will now follow it through to the conclusion. I got a message from William's office 3 days after he submitted the case to the district court. She received the complaint in person this morning. Verified signature. Sitting with a still hot cup of coffee in the little kitchen of Professor Martin's residence, I read the message. I didn't make a face. On the surface, nothing moved, but I could tell for sure throughout the city. 10 minutes later, my phone lighted up with an incoming call, Everly calling, and she started to worry. I gazed at the television, composed and unimpressed. No warning, no text. She was losing control because she phoned straight. I hit decline. Tens. She phoned again later. Reject. This time, I blocked the number by going into my contacts. I didn't have to listen to any excuses. Here, not a single person faked. This term is not another twisted one. She had lost her entry. I have no voice in my thoughts. No power. She had run out of moves. Finally, I was away of her grasp. While I silently reveled in the idea of Everly going downhill, suddenly my phone rang. Jack was the one. I took it up. He had a low, tight voice. I just learned that Everly is getting married in a week, Aiden. I said nothing. The rituals at the Grand Wood Lakeside Resort, which were held outside close to the marina, were then carried on by Jack. It was told to me by an old coworker, continues to collaborate with her. You are aware of the situation. Lists of guests, contracts for events. In the internal group conversations, they discuss everything and everything. I reclined in my chair and stared out the window. Regards. The first understand. I hung up. I then brought a piece of paper closer after opening my laptop. To make her wedding my stage, not to plot how to ruin her wedding. At Grand Wood Resort, which Everly previously referred to as her fairy tale dream, a week later. I wasn't present to celebrate the start of her wedding. I was present to put a stop to her act. At the height of the reception, I entered. Everybody looked at me. I'm sure some of you are asking why I'm here. Stable, I started Carmen. But I can't continue to live in deception. I lost everything to Everly. She paid for this wedding with that money. To get me hospitalized, she falsified mental health records so she could take possession of all I owned. Everly responded instantly. He is ill. All I wanted to do was assist him. Clinging to the victim role, she yelled. I gave her a direct look. I have evidence, I said. I then played the audio, which was Dr. Gregory's admission that Everly had tricked him into signing the phony documents. The room fell quiet. The tension became like a wire. The bridegroom's face became white. His relatives started chatting in low tones. Silently, one relative got up and left. Everly, too. A shattered smile crumbled behind her as she stood there. I'm not here to make her seem bad. I turned to the audience and stated that, this is what I'm here to tell you. Nobody has the right to bury another person in order to get to the top. Following the disclosure, Everly stumbled over to the bridegroom. She moved shakily and desperately, but he was already looking the other way. You can't abandon me. She trembled and choked. I adore you, which is why I did all of this. Slowly, he shook his head. You deceived us all. That is not the kind of person I can marry. His family remained silent. They got up and left the ceremony in silence. Everly was suddenly viewed as a stranger by friends who had formerly shared a toast and a joke with her. She faced me. She was crying uncontrollably. You can't do this, please. My brother is you. For our family, I did it. I took a while to respond. I simply stared at her for a long time in silence. "You stole everything from me," I replied. "I was imprisoned and given forged documents, manipulated everyone. You now assert that it was done for the family." Everly fell to the ground, broken. "You can't simply abandon me in this manner." Her voice was no more than a whisper as she begged. "Mom would never pardon you." I tightened my jaw. "I can't continue to live in a family that fabricates stories to shield someone like you now that Mom is gone. All I have left is you." She let forth one last scream. I didn't turn around. "You are no longer my family." A few weeks after the wedding ended, I left the bride exposed and the celebration in ruins as I left the wedding. The trial officially started. William, my lawyer, and a representative from the district attorney's office accompanied me to court. Each piece of evidence, including illegal transactions, fake documents, Jack's testimony, and the tape of Dr. Gregory's confession, had been painstakingly assembled. Everly sat through it all without saying a word. Her face was pallid, her eyes downcast. The cocky assurance she used to wear like armor was gone. She didn't say a single word of apology. In front of the court, the prosecutor read the accusations out loud. Everly Morgan was accused of stealing assets from a person who was legally unable, fraud and forging legal documents. A total of $1. $87 million was taken. In order to gain control of her brother's assets, the defendant manipulated and falsified psychiatric documents by taking advantage of her family bond, the court concluded. Her activities were planned, premeditated, sustained over several months, and motivated by money. The judge then handed out the punishment. Everly Morgan received a sentence of 5 years in a state prison in New York. She was also mandated to pay back the whole $1,870,000 that had been taken, plus interest and full payment of my lawyer's expenses. But that was not the end of the case. Under pressure from the overwhelming evidence, Everly acknowledged during the cross-examination that Dr. Gregory had received a $100 bribe to fabricate my medical records and approve a mental commitment without a clinical diagnosis. He was accused of conspiracy to conduct fraud, bribery, fabrication of a medical record, and egregious medical ethical violations. Dr. Gregory received a 4-year jail term from the court, revoked his medical license for good, and mandated that he pay the victim back the $100 bribe and pay the state a $250,000 fine. I was a different man when I left that courtroom. Although justice took its time to arrive, no one was spared. 3 months have passed since the trial concluded. $1.4 million has been given to me, the sum that the court was able to obtain following Everly's asset liquidation and account freeze. Following her sentence, the remaining $470,000 will be repaid over time. The remainder of the money may not even be something I desire. Not because I'm rich or that I've forgiven her, but rather because I've come to the realization that certain things are more important than snatching every single penny. And maybe, just maybe, I'll overlook the rest if Everly transforms. If she accepts the truth, and if she decides to live a life of integrity. The parting present was not for her current self, but rather for her potential future self. I used to think that strangers were the worst type of betrayers, but the person you once thought was family causes the most agony. I lost a sibling in a piece of my early years. However, I clung to something far more vital. I maintained my rationality, my clarity, and the dignity I almost lost in a familial trap. I've discovered that compassion does not equate to blindness. Furthermore, a family devoid of justice is only emotional blackmail, disguised as allegiance. I now get up every morning to confront a new life rather than run away from the old. A life I govern, a life I choose, and that's plenty for me. And before I complete this chapter, I would like to ask you who stuck with me all the way through. Was it immoral of me to take my sister to court in order to prioritize the truth above familial relationships and justice over silence? What would you do if you were in my position? Would you pardon me? Or would you battle for your life, honor, and name back? Post your comments beneath the narrative. I really want to know what you think. Remember to follow the channel whether you agree with me or not, and whether this tale has any significance for you. Help us expand by sharing it. We have more authentic tales to share, tales of trust, family, and the arduous journey back to oneself. I appreciate you listening. The next tale will see you again.